This is a Fox News alert. Mueller findings released. No collusion, no obstruction. Let's bring in Rudy Giuliani, President Donald Trump's attorney, former mayor of New York City. He joins us live from our nation's capital. Rudy, good morning to you.
Good morning.
You said yesterday that the findings were better than you expected. What do you mean?
Well, look, I think that it's quite clear that this group was hardly a group of Trump fans. It's made up of almost all Democrats, some of them very, very rabid partisans, including one who was a lawyer for the Clinton Foundation. Pretty extraordinary. Don't know how they accomplished that. Another one who's a notorious prosecutor who's been in ethical trouble all throughout his career. They conducted an investigation as if this were a terrorism case or an obstruction of justice case. I'm sorry, rather a organized crime case on their obstruction of justice and conspiracy theory. So they couldn't find it. If they can't find it, it's not there. Believe me, there was no obstruction of justice. There was no collusion. I just ask people to use your common sense. This investigation went on for 2 years. It cost actually about $40 million. 1.4 million documents. They got every document they wanted. They got every witness that they wanted. We stood in the way of nothing. Where's the obstruction? Where's the obstruction?
Some of the other channels,
Weissman theory?
Right. Some of the other channels are saying, well, we can't count this because the president didn't sit down for an interview. What's your reaction?
Well, I think I made 5,000 prosecutorial decisions in my career. Some of the worst criminals of the 1980s. I rarely got to interview anyone, the people that I indicted and the people I declined. That's very extraordinary when you do that. I mean, only because he was the president was there any pressure to do it. If he were just a regular citizen out there, Jay and I, or Jane and Marty, you think we'd have him even answer those questions? Of course not. He did that because he wanted to. And believe me, this is not something that usually happens. The real question now, though, is he's been absolved, vindicated, exonerated. You pick the word. Any lawyer never gets a letter like this. Usually you get a letter that says, we don't have enough evidence. In this case, we have complete vindication. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, the question now is, if there was no evidence of collusion, 3 investigations, no evidence of collusion, who made it up? This had to come from somewhere.
Right.
It didn't just didn't come out of thin air. I want to know who did it, who paid for it, who fueled it, because the person who did it and the group that did it knows it's untrue because they invented it.
Yeah, the president yesterday said it's time to look to the other side now. Last night we were all reading this report. I know your entire team was as well. I want to read an excerpt from it. It says the special counsel's investigation did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with Russia in its efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election. The report identifies no actions that, in our judgment, constitute obstructive conduct. And then it goes on to say, I was impressed by this because many people are saying, why did this investigation take 2 years? This is a waste of our taxpayer dollars. It's going on and on. But when you read this report, it was so thorough. And I think it was important for Mueller and his team and Mr. Barr and Rosenstein to include how thorough it was. 675 days. The total cost, they report $25.2 million. You're saying maybe $40 million. 2,800 subpoenas, 500 witnesses, and the total indictments about collusion, 0. What do you say? What was your reaction about how thorough this was when you read that?
It was thorough, and it was conducted by people who had a bias to get him. People who didn't want him elected, people who were crying when Hillary Clinton lost, people who donated relatively large sums of money to her. We know how bitter that election is, and we know how angry some people are as a result of that. So it was conducted by people who had every motive to get him and tried every tactic, and some I don't approve of, to try to get him, and to try to get people to lie. Listen to Mr. Corsi. Mr. Corsi yesterday was on, I think he was on Fox and Friends. It was quite a compelling statement of how they gave him a script. Hey, you want probation? Say this.
Right.
And man's got integrity. He didn't do it.
He did not. Over the last 2 years, though, we've all been waiting for the Mueller report, Rudy, and now we know. And Mr. Mueller was emphatic: no collusion, no evidence of collusion whatsoever. And that makes you wonder, when you look at, and we've got a montage here of Democrats who said there was evidence of collusion, what they do starting today. First the montage, then your reaction.
Sure. Love to see it.
I could certainly say with confidence that there is significant evidence of collusion.
Colluding with the leader of a hostile power.
We saw cold, hard evidence of the Trump campaign, indeed the Trump family, eagerly intending to collude, possibly.
Collusion.
Collusion.
Collusion. If there was not collusion, there was at least the effort to collude.
There was collusion. If they just do their work and do their job, they will find out it was collusion.
So, Rudy, how many of those Democrats do you think are going to apologize today?
Well, I think they're shameless. I've seen them already. Ignore it. I mean, we did spend enormous amounts of money and an enormous amount of time, and we had very skilled people who had a bias against the president. The definitive thing they said is, as 2 prior investigations concluded, no collusion. You would think they'd have the decency to say, I was wrong, I made a mistake. Even if they want to move on now to this other stuff they're going to look at and just embarrass themselves, at least stop and say, I was wrong. They should also be happy for the country. Every American, whether they like the president or they don't, should today breathe a sigh of relief that the President of the United States and all the people around him did not engage in the horrible crimes that these people were saying. Imagine if they had, how terrible it would be for the country. These people are unhappy with this finding. But shame on them. Shame on them.
You know, I did flip over to CNN last night, and Anderson Cooper actually said that a couple of times. This is good news for the country, which is surprising. But you did call into CNN, too. Here's a quote to show you how relentless the Democrats will be. From Pelosi and Schumer yesterday afternoon. This raises as many questions as answers, meaning the 4-page report. Senator Durbin says the people deserve the full truth. Schiff and Nadler and Cummings says we call for the Attorney General to come forward to testify, which I'm sure he'll do. So when this rest of the report comes out, so it's 675 pages, when you take out the grand jury testimony and when you take out the top secret things that have to be redacted, let's say you have 100 pages there. In it, it's going to list things like the Trump Tower meeting. It's going to list things like how long the president was in conversations with to have a Moscow tower. And then there'll be, my hunch is, there'll be a reinvigoration of those saying, how could Mueller not come to the conclusion that the president conspired? What are you going to do with the backlash that'll happen in a week or two?
We have, Jay and I and Jane and Marty have about 90 pages of response that we can't use right now because we're not going to respond to no collusion, no obstruction. We agree. But if that happens, I'm very, very confident that our side will prevail again. So please, you know, people just, here's the thing to understand, and I understood this from the very beginning, which is why I'm so passionate about it. He didn't do any of this. The man is an innocent man. Again, whether you like him or you don't like him, and I happen to, you know, love him. I mean, he's one of my very good friends. And to see him go through this was horrible, just as a friend. To see him go through it to the President of the United States really broke my heart as a patriot. The president shouldn't be distracted with made-up stories. Collusion is made up. If collusion is made up, well, then how crazy is it? How could you have obstruction? Plus, please, guys, all of you, wake up. The investigation wasn't obstructed. Right. What did he think about it? Of course he didn't think about it. But you don't prosecute people for what they think. You prosecute them for what they do. If we prosecuted people for what they think, you know, half the country would be in jail.
Well, this is justice. When you didn't do anything wrong, you're finally proven innocent.
This is a Weissman crazy theory. Just like campaign finance is a crazy theory. Those payments are, in part, personal payments, if not fully. Once there are personal payments for any reason at all, it's not a campaign contribution. Just think if people could settle the lawsuits against them with campaign money. Everybody be running for office, collecting money, and settling the sexual harassment complaints against them, the breach of contracts complaints against them. 30 members of Congress have had our taxpayer dollars settled their sexual harassment. Did they list it as a campaign contribution? Of course they didn't.
Hey, Rudy, we have stacks of newspapers.
I now want to know who they are.
We have stacks of newspapers in front of us, and the headlines are pretty shocking, especially for some of the liberal newspapers. New York Post wrote, no collusion, no obstruction. New York Times wrote, Mueller finds no Trump-Russia conspiracy. Wall Street Journal, Mueller finds no Trump collusion. New York Daily News, Teflon Don, and Washington Post, Mueller finds no conspiracy. But compare that to what they were saying. Look at a flashback of what the media was saying in the past.
The new chairman of the House Intelligence Committee is vowing to investigate a bombshell new report about the president.
To this bombshell report from BuzzFeed.
If the BuzzFeed bombshell is true,
this is evidence of willingness to commit collusion.
I think they're all going to end up together in prison.
He was colluding with the leader of a hostile power.
So much involvement, so many connections with the Kremlin.
Trump now sits at the threshold of impeachment.
We are in high crimes and misdemeanor, and we are in impeachment territory.
Right. We are looking at the possibility that the President of the United States and those around him during an election campaign colluded with a hostile foreign power to undermine the basis of our democracy.
It's so obvious that they were eager to collude with Russia. Now we're seeing the evidence that there was a conspiracy to cover up.
He may be the first president in quite some time to face the real prospect of jail time.
All right, your reaction?
Well, that's the group that's got to apologize. If they are decent people, they will now apologize. There's no high crime, there's no low crime, and there's no misdemeanor. And remember, this report was signed off on in the name of not just Attorney General Barr, but Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, who's been into this case from the very beginning and appointed Mueller, and by the Office of Legal Counsel of the Justice Department, who are all highly skilled professional lawyers. And by the way, their interpretation of the law is the right one. The other one is a, let's call it a legal term, a cockamamie theory.
Well, Rudy, you know, there was an investigation by the FBI. The FBI unleashed its powers on a candidate for president, which is an amazing first, on the grounds that the campaign had colluded with Russia. And of course, now we know that's not true.
And with a lead agent and his girlfriend, who hated the president of the United States, vowed to stop him and then to take him out of office. When do you get that?
Sure.
Never. Never in a well-run, decent government seeking justice.
I think the Wall Street Journal writes this morning on their op-ed page, did someone con the FBI into one of the great dirty tricks in American political history?
Yes. And you're going to find out, believe me, who it was.
Give us a hint.
Nope. I can't give you a hint yet. We're still working on it. I got some theories, and there's a lot more than theories.
Is it somebody from the Obama administration?
Just pay attention.
This administration or the last administration?
Just pay attention.
Will that person be held accountable?
I believe so. I think we're in an era of, you know, a real Justice Department where just because you have a D after your name, Democrat, you know, or Clinton or something like that, you still can be held to account.
Right, very interesting. So, Rudy, what was the president like last time when you spoke to him? And number two is, can you explain when you first knew that this might be breaking the direction you wanted it to?
Didn't know it until we saw it. I mean, I always hope for the best, but you know, get ready for the worst. We were ready for some, you know, very, very difficult situation where they misinterpreted everything. And I emphasize again that this report comes from the Justice Department, not just Attorney General Barr, although it's about as well-written a legal document as I've ever seen.
4 pages. Now,
concise and powerful.
Do you give Robert Mueller credit, and do you feel bad about the discrediting of Robert Mueller from you and the president?
No, I don't at all. He deserved every bit of criticism he got. I mean, look, the fact that he couldn't find evidence is a testament to the fact that he's an honest man. He's not going to make it up. But boy, did he try. And boy, did he have some people that did things that, as a prosecutor for almost 20 years, shocked me. So they did things that, just because they came to the right conclusion, these are things you shouldn't be allowed to do. Manafort in solitary confinement? God almighty, I didn't put Fat Tony Salerno in solitary confinement, except once when he threatened a judge for a couple of days, and then he apologized.
Right.
We were all wondering if the president was going to speak before he got on the plane and when he got off the plane, and he did, and you could tell it. He was really excited and said America's a great country. So I was glad that he spoke out. Will he be speaking again?
Of course. Well, you know the president. Of course he's going to speak again, when he wants to, and freely. That's, I think, the reason why so many of the American people support him. He's a breath of fresh air. He actually, I was thinking last night, he communicates more than any American president I remember. I mean, all those basically scrums that he has getting on and off the airplane, those are press conferences.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
they're very informative. Some of them take 20 minutes.
And sometimes they go on and on. You know what? The president.
And he loves them, and he's great at it.
And it drives his lawyers crazy.
You know,
well, not now. Now we're a little relaxed. Well, no, he doesn't drive us crazy, but you know, we're supposed to take care of him and protect him. That's our job as a lawyer. So everything I did, I feel perfectly comfortable with. This investigation is much more of a shame than people know, and it was conducted in a more shameful way.
And what do you have to say to your critics?
Maybe they should apologize that first of all, it isn't our strategy. We had an innocent man we were defending. I know he's the president of the United States, but he didn't collude. He didn't obstruct. This investigation wouldn't have taken place if he obstructed. So both of them were bogus theories. It's a horrible thing when you have to represent somebody who's innocent. I mean, I could see in his eyes sometimes he would say to me, I didn't do anything with the Russians. I didn't do anything. How could they do this? He handled it better than anyone could possibly handle it. The only time he would really get upset, not about him, but about his family and about his co-workers and the people who came to Washington to change things and left having spent a lot of money, completely upset and dispirited. He feels very bad about that. And I think he can now, he can't possibly be a better president in what he's accomplished. It's astounding, but I think now he can enjoy it more.